Okay, in this video, I want to show you how to export your artwork, your raster artwork, so that it can be used in your final file for the etching and laser engraving. And again, we're going to bring this into a program where we're going to utilize it to do some line work for the actual cutting of the wood too. So we're just exporting it from here and bringing it into something different before we go to the laser cutter. However, you can, if you wanted to just etch this in the middle of a 12 by 12 inch piece of wood, you can export this as a JPEG and bring it directly to the laser cutter at this point and etch this into a wood or onto a cut piece of wood already. But because this project is going to utilize raster and vector art to make the project, we're going to export it and then bring it there first. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see our whole screen. Now, we don't want this entire image anymore. This helps us locate it on a 12 by 12 piece of wood, which we have, and it helps us get the size right. But in the end, we don't want to actually export out this huge 12 by 12 inch square. We want something that's a little closer to the actual size of the image that we're going to be etching. So I'm going to use my crop tool, which is right here. And as soon as you click it, it gives you these handles that you can drag. And we'll give ourselves a little bit of space, and we'll drag it to here. Now this makes the photograph much easier to handle because it's a much smaller size, and especially if we go to a different software, we won't have this big clunky giant white rectangle. But also, because we're going to be embedding a raster pixel image into Illustrator, Illustrator will understand these outside bound edges, which might cause a little bit of trouble later on if they are very big, and I'll explain that as we go forward. But that's another reason we do this. So as soon as I hit crop, I hit return, we have a much nicer image to work with. We're going to go to File, Export, Export As. And this will bring up a dialog box on how to export it. And you have a couple different options. A PNG, which is a portable network graphic. You can use this. It saves alpha channels, which means it saves things that are like clear, or things that are not sort of transparent or clear. But for this, we're going to actually look at saving as a JPEG. See, here's some of your other options. We're going to save as a JPEG because this allows us to bring it right to the laser cutter for printing right now if we wanted it to. And we might look at that too. And it allows us to go to Illustrator and use this as an image too. So we're going to do JPEG. We're going to hit Export All. We'll come up with another dialog box and asking us where we want it to save. I'm going to save to the desktop. However, my advice to you is never save anything to the desktop. Before you start a project, create a folder somewhere to save all of your work, all of your original photographs, all of your files. That way you know where it is. If it's on the desktop, someone will delete it eventually. Especially when you don't want them to. So find the place you want it to go. Again, I'm going to go to desktop just because it's easier for this series. Label it what you want, laserproject1.jpg, hit save and hit export all, and it's going to save it there. And then if you want, you can save your Photoshop file too. And that will also bring up a dialog box asking you where you want that Photoshop or PSD file to save, and just save it. Alright, so I'm going to minimize this so that we can see we have our Photoshop file here, .psd. We have our JPEG here, which is something we can put on a flash drive, bring it to the laser cutter computer, and actually etch this out right now as it is. I can see a few areas I've kind of messed up on right here, and this corner is a little dark, but I'm not worried about perfection right now. I just want to walk you through this process. So we have our JPEG, it's exported, we have our PSD saved, we have everything we need. to do the raster engraving, but we're going to take this JPEG now, bring it into Illustrator, and cut some cool shapes out using that house and moving around it. So in the next video, we'll fire up Illustrator, which is a vector art software, and we'll begin looking at how to create paths and making the artwork in Illustrator that will then work for the LaserCutter in terms of cutting and plotting that machine out. So the Photoshop stuff, the raster artwork, will be used to etch, kind of like a printer, and burn line by line from top to bottom until the image is etched in. Illustrator, where we're going to next, will actually be used to create paths that the machine will follow in order to cut things out or engrave lines.